All right. Hello, everyone. This is Judith Hope, and this is episode 2 of my podcast from Los Angeles to Seattle. So, if you haven't listened to episode 1, definitely recommend going back and listening to that. It kind of is like the setup for this whole series, which is basically going to be my story of kind of everything that is happening to me as I leave Los Angeles, where I was living for about 5 months, and I move up to Seattle. And no, I'm not going straight there. I'm going this like crazy route, like through the desert over to Texas for Thanksgiving, and then I'm going to make my way up to Seattle, which as of now, it's November 15th when I'm recording this. I don't know how I'm actually going to get to Seattle or have my place in Seattle yet. So I feel like that hasn't dropped in, and I feel like that might be its own episode coming up. But right now I'm just going to focus on the present and where I went after I left Joshua Tree. So in episode 1, I recorded that when I was in Joshua Tree. So I was there. I had come from Los Angeles, a super quick drive. I was there for like a day and a half. I mean, I guess 2 days total. And then I went on to Sedona. So Sedona is what I'm going to be primarily talking about today, my experience there. Before I get started, I do want to let you know if you want to work with me one-on-one, I offer all different types of sessions. Typically, my clients are people who are wanting to understand their life purpose and where they came from and why they came to planet Earth a little bit better. Also, people want to open their third eye, begin to use their own intuitive abilities. Doesn't mean you have to become like a psychic in the psychic shack, right? Like in the parking lot in the back or whatever it may be. But just using your intuitive abilities in your day-to-day life, whether that's, business, career, and your relationships. So if any of that sounds like it's, might be you, you want to check out my offerings one-on-one, I have linked them below. I'm primarily an Akashic Records practitioner, and that's kind of my primary tool, used to help my clients, but I also work with things like light language and energy healing and Reiki and codes from Lyra, right? And so I have a lot of different tools in the tool basket to help you guys out. So yeah, that link is below. But without further ado, let's talk about my time in Sedona. So Sedona ended up being like different than I thought it would be, or I imagined it to be. It's very touristy. It's very, very touristy. It reminded me a lot of New Mexico. I grew up going to New Mexico a lot on vacation as a kid, and it was just very similar. I guess I expected it to be a little bit more like hip or cool or have trendy or artsy types of places. Like Marfa, Texas, if you guys have been there, it's just all trendy, kind of cutesy, artsy, and I think Marfa was kind of became up and coming because a lot of artists from New York City came to West Texas and kind of built up the Marfa community with art, and then more local businesses started popping up. And that just was not the vibe of Sedona. The places you would go and eat felt very much like you're at a ski lodge or you're somewhere where people vacation. And honestly, it felt like people in their 60s and 70s would love it there. Also, the spiritual community is huge there, but there's also a huge proportion of the population that goes there that are not spiritual. You could tell there's definitely a divide between spiritual people coming and then people who are there to hike or the science of the vortexes, things like that. And that's actually going to come into play kind of in one of the stories I'm going to, tell today here in a little bit. It was definitely interesting getting to Sedona. It is truly feels like a mountain town. I don't think you can get in or out of Sedona without driving high up on the mountains on these tiny windy roads, which has always been a huge fear of mine to drive on those types of roads. But I did it, and I did it more than once. I did it 4 times total. And the first time I just kind of found myself in that situation, and it's just one of those things, I'm on this trip, I'm going to Sedona, I'm by myself, there's no one else to drive. And I had to do it. And the more I've been traveling by myself, going to these different locations in the city, in the US, driving my car, I've just found there's situations where I'm on my own and I just have to do things that I probably, if I was with someone, I'd be like, no, you drive, you do this. I'm scared, I don't want to do it. I've just found myself in those situations and kind of conquering them without really even having to make the decision to, because it's like I'm here and I have to do it. So yeah, so Sedona is like you go in through the mountains, you leave through the mountains. If there's another route out of Sedona that's not through the mountains, I am not familiar with it. Also, Sedona is super expensive. It is like crazy expensive. Like the only other place I've seen that like highly overpriced, it's not like a major city or hub, is Salem, Massachusetts. Like I couldn't even get my own Airbnb there because I was like, I'm not paying like $500 a night for like an Airbnb. There's no way. So I rented a room in like someone's home. They have a couple of their rooms where they like make it where you can stay there, and it's like shared kitchen, shared living room, and that type of thing. But it was like, and part of it too is because I wanted to go out and do stuff like every day. Like I went on tours every day, went and tried out new experiences. So I also wanted to save money as well. But it is crazy high. And I get it, because the vortex energy is also crazy potent and crazy powerful. It's also absolutely like beautiful and stunning, like the views of the mountains. Like it's crazy to just be driving around and just see them everywhere. Like it feels like a huge area for that many mountains, and there's just so many of them, and like it's pretty easily accessible. Like there are definitely like hikes and things like that you kind of have to go out. But even like people who are, maybe not as able to walk around, maybe they need the assistance of like walking with a cane, or they walk slow, or whatever it is, like I still feel like there's a lot of opportunity for like just to pull over on the side of the road, and then there's like a little fairly flat place they can walk and they can go look at the mountains and stuff. So it's pretty accessible as well, I would say. So I think it was maybe the third day I was in Sedona. So I got there and I had to get my bearings. I also had to do laundry and go to the laundromat. And so I went and I was trying to figure out what I really wanted to spend my time like doing in Sedona, right? And the first kind of thing that I ended up doing that was more like an activity or a tour was the pink Jeep tour. So it's like a big thing in Sedona. I don't know if they have pink Jeep tours other locations, but there's like this big thing, the building that says like pink on it, and they have all the pink Jeeps sitting out, and like there is a part of me that wants a pink Jeep so badly. Like right now I have a Mini Cooper. It was my dream car in high school. Like I manifested it into reality, like even the colors that I wanted in high school. But I definitely could see myself having a pink Jeep in the future. So of course, I had to go on the pink Jeep tour, and I was there. I hadn't experienced the vortexes yet, so they have a tour called Touch the Earth Tour. And this pink Jeep, tour company is definitely not a spiritual business, right? It's more of a tourist business, and you go, and it's just like you go and you get a tour guide and you learn the history and about the plants and the geography and then some of the science stuff too, right? But I was like, this is a good kind of intro to at least go to the vortex, understand more about it, and I get to ride like in this super cute, pink Jeep. So I ended up going, it was me, the tour guide, and then 3 other people that were all part of the same party. So it was like, these folks were older than me, probably like in their 60s, probably retired, at least the couple. So there was like a heterosexual couple, a man and a wife that were like in their 60s. There was like this woman who was with them. I guess she was like a friend or something, but she like wasn't there with a partner. So she was there with this guy and his wife. And the way I say it that way is it just very energetically like kind of came across that way. I don't know. And maybe it's because the way the tour guide was kind of like talking to him. But definitely felt like it was important for this guy to come on the tour, and like his wife was there like supporting him. Like that's what they gave like energetically, if that makes sense. And so that's why I said it that way. But like the tour guide introduced herself as, and I wish I remembered her name, but I don't. As she's more into science and spiritual stuff. So we're going to be talking about the vortexes. We're going to be looking at them more from a scientific perspective today, is what she said at the beginning. And so this guy is like, oh, I'm super into science and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, okay, great. She's like, you're the only guy on the tour. And so like, I'll talk to you a certain way that we talk to like, men and not women, like all this, I don't know. It's kind of this weird vibe or whatever. Maybe she's just trying to make him feel more comfortable because like he is the only dude, and there's like 3 ladies with him, right? Me, his wife, and then this other lady. And so we go up to the first, like, it's the airport, and it's like this airport, and then there's like a small airport, so it's just like this parking lot you can, park in. And then you walk over, there's like a viewing area, so we go in. They have a deal, she gets to park for free there. And we get out and we take pictures, and it's awesome. Like, she took some awesome pictures of me. I was very happy with her photography skills. Definitely, you can tell she's been a tour guide for a while and taking pictures of people for a while. And then we start talking about the vortexes, and just like, this guy is super like scientific about it, and like the energy and stuff. And like, I actually did not really know what a vortex was prior to going to Sedona. Like, people always talk about, gotta go to Sedona for the vortex, and it's so powerful, and like, it's a portal to another dimension, and like all this stuff. And we'll get more into my experience in Sedona, but with the vortexes. But I didn't really know what they were, and I just heard that, right? And so this guy saying, like, he explains the scientific version of it, which I'm probably gonna butcher this, but my understanding is it's like, basically it's like it's like the ley lines of like the grid of the earth. I'm not going to say the matrix, I'm going to say the grid of the earth. And where Sedona sits, like, if you follow that grid along the edge of the earth, you would get to like other really famous sites, like the Egyptian pyramid and things like that, right? Like famous, like holy or spiritual sites. And so he's like explaining all the like science behind it, and the tour guide is like, yeah, you're right on. And then like the other two ladies are not like talking too much, and I'm like, well, is it like a portal to like contact aliens? Like, I'm kind of making it known I'm maybe like a little bit more woo-woo or spiritual, but I don't always like to go straight into that. You kind of have to read the room and see like what people's reactions are going to be first. And what she says, the portal is actually different than the vortex. But the vortex is like this energetic like point where the energy is like swirling or something like that, right? So clearly science is not my thing, but I'm going to try my best to explain like what I can. And so that was kind of our first site. And so we went there, and then we went, and like that was all like on paved road to get to this airport site. Like, this is literally like the Sedona like airport, which is like a small airport that we went to. And then we go out like off road, and it's like a crazy bumpy ride. Like, oh my gosh, like we're going all over the place, but it's also really cool to go out there like that. And she takes us kind of like out into the woods or the mountains. And she, finds a stopping point by this trail, and she's going to take us like up this trail. You got to walk like very, very short trail, like 5-minute trail. And we walk, but it is all uphill. So we walk up to the very top, and we're like on this like plateau where we're up really high in the vortex energy, and we have all these mountains around us. And so we're up there, and we're just kind of like, walking around, and she's saying facts, and we're just kind of like looking and enjoying the views. But this is the Touch the Earth tour. So it is supposed to have this spiritual component to it. And she starts doing this meditation and like playing music from like spiritual music, I think is just from like YouTube on her phone. I don't think she had a little speaker. And she's kind of like walking us through this meditation. And so that's when I kind of like let loose a little bit. I'm like, okay, like, I'm here in Sedona. I want to have my spiritual experience. And so I start like if you've ever, like, I've had the beginnings of like a Kundalini awakening. Like, I have not had a full one yet, but it's like you can feel the energy kind of like in your spine or your core start to swirl, and your head starts to like move with it. Your whole body starts to move with it. And so I started doing that and just kind of like really connecting with the energy of the mountains, of the vortex. And oh my gosh, it brought up so much emotion. And I wasn't expecting that. Like, I'm expecting to start channeling and like talking to the Pleiadians, or getting these big downloads about society or the meaning of life or what's going on other planets. And what it felt like was more like a plant medicine ceremony. It brought up all these emotions for me. And, if you listen to my first episode, you know that I'd been in LA for 5 months, and I had to pack up and leave by myself with a back injury. And it was very stressful and hard to have to move and pack all this much stuff when it's like I could like barely walk, because my back injury was so bad. And so all of that stress and that emotion and that hurt of, having to do that on my own kind of came up. And I was feeling it. And then I was just feeling a lot of still, and I've worked on this a lot. I've worked through this a lot, but a lot of the fear that my soul had in coming to Earth to become human. I'd had a lot of past lives on Earth and other planets where I just didn't want to be in a physical body, and it was difficult for me, for my soul. And so there was a lot of fear coming to Earth, and being human, a place where it's very intense to be in a physical body, and it's intense to be a human because of the way humans are designed. And so this all started coming up, and the tour guide walks over to me and she's like, what's going on? What are you feeling? And I literally just start crying. I felt so safe with her, and I just started crying, and I was like, I'm just thinking about how hard it is to be a human, right? Because doing all that stuff in a physical body and having to move all my stuff when I was hurt like that, and having to figure out a way to get through the situation, get my stuff packed either in my car or in a storage unit and get out by the date that my lease ended, and then get on the road, was hard because I didn't have family or friends really to call there to help. And so, I just started crying. And up to this point, this tour guide had been more scientific and talking to this dude who was all into science. And all of a sudden, she switches into full spiritual woo-woo talk. She starts talking about, you have to remember, right now we're in two different realities. Right now we're shifting from the third dimension into the 5 dimension, and some people are in the third dimension and some people are in the 5 dimension, and that's why it's so intense right now. And just all the stuff she was saying was so beautiful, and so I felt spot on to what I was feeling in the situation. But it was insane. She had presented herself as this more scientific type of person, a guide, and had been talking to that dude that way the entire time. And then she sees me more spiritual, and she starts talking about this stuff. And it's so relevant to see this, because she does have to switch back and forth, right? Because we are in two realities right now. And I think a lot of us in the spiritual community, we have to do that so much. I have to do that so much from my personal experience. It's every time I'm meeting new people, I have to read the room. I have to figure out what words to say, how to present myself, how to say, what I do, and explain it. Can I go full out spiritual and be I read the Galactic Akashic Records, I channel aliens, I tell people what type of aliens they were in a past life, I'm helping with the ascension from 3D to 5D, or do I have to kind of back off and say, yeah, so I have my own business, I'm an entrepreneur, I do a lot of different things, and then I talk about my work as a CPA first, and my business consulting, and then I talk about I also help people understand their life purpose better. There's a lot of different ways I can describe what I do, and it does feel almost code switching sometimes. It's okay, am I talking to someone who's awake and gets it, or am I talking to someone where I'm going to have to use, certain words? And I think this is something that a lot of people in the spiritual industry are facing. I was watching the most recent episode of the Kardashians on Hulu. Always love the Kardashians. I know they're a hot topic, controversial. But from my human, obviously, I don't know what's going on with them. I have some ideas, but I'm still trying to figure out what's kind of going on with them. But my human just loves watching their reality show, right? The human side of it. And so I was watching it, and a couple of the daughters, Kendall and Chloe, were working with this yoga instructor with their mom, to help their mom kind of relax, because she's kind of known on the show, Kris Jenner is known as being a control freak. And so they wanted her to relax, so they were having her work with this yoga instructor to to do these different exercises and breathe and all that kind of good stuff. And so when they're done with the yoga at the end, the instructor brings out these cards. To me, they look okay, these are oracle cards, right? And Kris Jenner she's older. I think she's in her 70s. She's from that generation that's very focused on religion and I've been good and I'm going to go to heaven. And so, she sees the cards and she's like, are those tarot cards? Like, kind of like, oh my God, like tarot cards, those are evil or of the devil or, whatever it may be. And so the instructor goes, no, they're intention cards. And I'm like, I don't know, like those look like oracle cards, to me. Those don't look like some kind of cards that are just about intention setting, that are really made to be more kind of like less spiritual and more like commercial, or more just kind of like for everyone, maybe psychology, more like based on psychology or just like mental health or something. They looked like oracle cards. And so they kind of show everyone's card draws. And I was like, yeah, those are definitely oracle cards. And when Chris, the mom, pulls her card, it starts talking about past lives. And so that's a pretty spiritual concept that is in, I would say, direct opposition to what Christianity teaches, right? Which is like, you do right and wrong, you either sin or you don't, and at the end of your life you're judged and you go to heaven or hell. Like, you don't get another shot at having a life, a human life. But the instructor starts reading the description, the guidebook description of this past life card, and Chris starts crying. And like, this woman has like been in front of the camera for years. She's very focused on her image of herself, of her children, of her family. And she started really having a true emotional reaction on camera because what the card was saying was so relevant to her life. And it may not have been about, like the card was talking about like past lives and bringing in stuff your soul has dealt with in other lifetimes where it feels so real and so big, even though, in this lifetime, it's like, why would I feel this way? Like, why would I have such a visceral reaction or such a strong reaction to something? And it's because you've dealt with it lifetime after lifetime. But it brought up in her stuff about her like past lives and the different versions of her when she's younger, and her situation she was younger, and the people in her life when she was younger, and the different times in her life that were happening, and thinking about the past, right? And so it brought up a lot in her, and she's this like, woman who is not into spirituality and very, sticks to like religion, and it still had that reaction in her. But I don't know if she would even have been willing to look at the card if it was an oracle card, is what the instructor had called it, or if she had said some other terminology that was more related to spirituality or woo-woo. But because she called it an intention card, that word's a lot more safe, right? And so I feel like a lot of times as a practitioner, I'm having to like really not use certain words. Like, I stay away from the word like psychic a lot because people are like, psychic's a scammer and it's not real, and if psychic abilities were real, they would work this way. And I'm like, well, how do you know how psychic abilities would work? The only way you know is if you learn, you take courses on them, and you practice and trial and error and figure out how to use them, right? Like, and it's hard because, there are a lot of people who are scammers in the spiritual industry. I was an auditor for 10 years, so I always look at people from like a critical perspective, and you see it all the time, right? But it's just, it's hard because then, people who are legitimately trying to help others and trying to help people heal and work through stuff, and like, even like the psychology, behind it. A lot of times when you work in the healing arts, like, you have to understand human psychology and sometimes do like the same type of work that like therapists would do, right? So it's hard work. And I just think it's interesting because it has so much stigma around it. And a lot of that stigma is attached to fear, right? Because people fear the unknown. They've been told it's bad, by society or by their religious organization or their religious leaders, or, or even media sometimes makes it out to be like the occult or some separate thing where bad things happen, So it's hard because a lot of people are turning more towards it right now, right? And we're shifting towards spiritual stuff becoming way more mainstream. Like, even the past like 5 years or so, like, I mean, it was like, what was it, like 21, 22, 23, like astrology was such a big deal. Like, on the dating apps, they would add your sign, like, what sign are you? And that was not the way it was when I was in my 20s. Like, I never put like, oh, I'm a Libra or something like that, right? So it's gotten way more mainstream, right? Um, but I thought it was so interesting going back to this tour guide that she was having to do it, because it's like you have me on this tour, this super spiritual person, Galactic Akashic Records practitioner, and then you have this dude that doesn't believe that any of that stuff is real, and he's all science-based. So she has to be able to talk to both of them. And I feel like that's so many of us right now, whether we're spiritual practitioners or just in our lives, and trying to figure out, okay, like with this new friend, how do I talk to them? Or with this family member, like, how do I talk to them about spiritual beliefs and things like that? Like, how do I phrase things? And I think communication, I mean, it's key, but it's so important, in these types of situations. And so that was like right at the beginning of my trip to Sedona. So after that, I was pretty much crying like the entire time I was in Sedona. It felt like all my emotions were constantly just like coming up to the surface to be cleared. I mean, I felt this emotion of just like deep sadness. I mean, I would probably say it would contribute to like depression or like hopelessness. And I was just feeling that all the time. Like I was on the verge of tears, like all the time. And so, like, the more places I would go, either to like restaurants or shops, or like I went to the spa one day, and I would tell people about my experience, about how I went up to the vortex on this vortex tour, and I was crying, and it was such a like brought up all these emotions, and it was so strong. um and like people would tell me, they're like, yeah, like in Sedona, like sometimes people are so upset or negative, it just brings up all this stuff. And people, and like these are people who are working jobs in Sedona, so sometimes they have to deal with people being really rude or like abrupt, or like very negative, right, or like complaining and things like that. And so I just was like, that's interesting, right? Like, that's interesting that like, and some of these people may not be spiritual, may not understand what's happening, and they're just like, oh, I'm just in a bad mood, or bad things are happening to me. But like, no, it's like it's stirring up these things in you for you to process them, and either let them go, give them back to the earth to be transmuted, because you don't want them in your life, in your field, in your body anymore, or just to come up and you not know how to handle them, right? And so I went on another tour. So I actually ended up like hiring this private guide from like Sedona Mystical Tours. So like the first tour had been great, but I really wanted to go on a tour that was like super super spiritual, with like a spiritual guide who's gonna talk about all the spiritual stuff, right? And we're gonna do meditations, and I'm gonna have an experience, right? And so I hired this private guide, and we ended up going to the, I don't know if I'm saying this right, the Amitabha. I don't think that's the right way you say it, but it's the stupa in Peace Park, which is where like there's two stupas to Buddha and a Buddha statue there. And so I ended up doing that with her, and like doing peace prayers. And my tour guide, during part of the tour, so it would be like informational. We talk about my intention, and then we do like prayers and walk around the like stupa and the medicine wheel and all those different sites that they have there. But then we also did like a meditation, and after one of the meditations, which again, I started crying and all this stuff came up, like I was just constantly crying on all these tours, because I was just letting myself feel what I needed to feel, because I was like, I don't want to carry these emotions anymore. I don't want them in my body, dragging my vibration down, getting trapped in my body, things like that. But she showed me this map of Sedona, and it was really cool because it had like the different hot spots of energy on it. And it was some kind of like rating or index that you can like measure, like through a scientific like way, measure like the amount of energy. And she was showing me like the average, and like Sedona's like 10 times that, right? And so there's this like hot spot of energy in Sedona. And she was telling me that back in the day, the Native Americans that lived in Sedona, like they wouldn't actually live in Sedona. Like they could feel and sense the energy in Sedona was so extreme that they would only go there for their like healing and shamanic ceremonies, and then they would actually live on the outskirts of Sedona. And my guide let me know that she also, I think she lived in Cottonwood. There's a bunch of really cute, cool like touristy towns right around Sedona, which makes for really good day trips. But she lives in one of those towns. She doesn't actually live in Sedona. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I could live here. Like, just with this much energy, constantly pulling things up to the surface and the emotions, like, I just think it'd be too much for a human body to live there, right? And I think it's interesting because a lot of people do live there now, right? Like, it is a town and it's a tourist, it's city. So there's people who live there and operate businesses there and may live there for whatever reason, But I just think it's like crazy to live in that type of energy every day and how that would affect you, like how that would affect a person. Um, and it's interesting because while I was in Sedona, I did get a lot of downloads about certain things. I wouldn't say I got more than normal because I normally get, well, maybe I got maybe a little more than normal. I don't know. I get downloads pretty frequently no matter where I am just because like that's how I live my life, more like intuition based and just like sensing, feeling through things as opposed to always being logical. Um, but one of the big downloads I did get in Sedona is that I realized I don't have depression any longer. And, I grew up really feeling this sense of hopelessness. And I didn't identify that that's what it was until I was in college and I lost 100 pounds and I didn't feel hopeless anymore. But I was overweight my entire life. I was bullied, and I was kind of told, like, hey, like, it's your fault because you can't control your eating and you need to stop eating. And I'm not going to get too much into like that whole thing today, but that's a lot of different factors as to why I had those eating habits, and still fight off those eating habits. Like some of it is just strictly like genetics. Some of it's my trauma from my past lives that I brought into this life. Some of it's the ancestral trauma from my like current family, right? And then I'm trying to heal. And then some of it's just the addictive components that are in mass produced food today, right? So it's a lot of different things. But the past few years since I've spiritually awakened, like I have gone into so much deep healing work. And there was a moment, I think it was almost 2 years ago now, where I really had to decide, like, do I want to stay on the planet and live a life and do the mission that I came here to do? And there was a part of me that said, no, like, I can't do this anymore. It's too hard to be in a human body. I think for me, it was related to not being able to find a romantic partner as well. And constantly putting myself out there and dating people and just the universe being no, like you're not getting anyone, and it just really made me feel like it was hopeless. Like there was nothing I could do, right? But there was a moment a couple years ago where I had to decide, like, I'm going to stay, I'm going to finish this. And it wasn't like, oh, yay, like everything's going to be perfect now, I'm going to manifest and all this amazing stuff's going to happen to me. It's like, no, I'm going to stay and I'm going to finish this, right? And that's the decision I had to make. And it was a turning point. And then slowly, probably over the next 18 months after that, I went through a really deep healing point, like healing stuff with like my family. I lived at home for like 3 or 4 months and really healed some childhood wounds, right? Really digging into past life stuff, right? And a lot of this stuff was related to romance and to like different things that were triggering really unhealthy eating habits in me, and really digging deep and going into that. And so, probably been like an 18, 19, 20 month process since I made that decision point to stay. But being in Sedona, I realized like I don't have depression anymore. I don't feel hopeless, and I have never gone to a mental health expert for help with depression. I've never been on any kind of antidepressant. I've never done any of that. And I feel like my depression is gone and I want to be on the earth and I'm excited. And I feel like there's so many things that I now have an interest in that it's like I can see the beauty in it. Like yesterday I went to this like Lego miniature place. You could walk around and see all these kind of like, different Lego displays they had set up. And it was like, I love this so much. Like maybe I should start getting more Legos and playing with Legos because it's so cool to get to do that, And I feel like I've just kind of chosen to be more hopeful about the future, even when things are, rough. Like I have to be like, no, like I'm going to keep going with my business and I'm going to keep growing it. and I'm going to keep, making more content and getting more followers and more clients. And I'm going to keep doing this so that I can, do this work I enjoy, right? Because getting to talk about my experiences and spiritual stuff is a lot more enjoyable to me than just going and being an auditor at a 9 to 5 and let me tie and make sure this number matches this number, like it's a lot more fulfilling. And, and so it was weird because I was like, in Sedona, I was like, wow, like I don't have depression anymore, right? And I think some of the last feelings of sadness and hopelessness that had come up for me and kind of controlled me in the past, definitely controlled me as a teenager and in a lot of my 20s, they came up and I chose to not engage with them because sometimes it feels good to wallow in self-pity and sadness. And I chose to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to believe any of that. I'm going to believe that I can manifest these things into my life that I want, right? That I can find a life partner, right? To build a life with, to do all these cool things with, and that I can, go out and explore and create the life, that I want to live. And so for me, I definitely feel like the energy in Sedona is crazy powerful, like these realizations I had. And I definitely can understand why people go and do retreats there. I would love to do a retreat there. I'd love to host retreats there in the future. Like, I just think the energy is so powerful. I cannot imagine living there. I think just in general too, like Sedona is like very small. And like literally I was getting a little bit of like feeling cooped up because it's so small. Like I said, it's like surrounded by mountains. So one day I remember I was like at a coffee shop working on something because that's my thing. I love going to coffee shops and exploring them, even though sometimes I always just get like an iced almond milk latte. That's like my go-to. But I remember I was at the coffee shop. I think I was just like making content or answering emails or something. And I was like, I ran out of hand sanitizer. And I was like, there's not going to be a Bath and Body Works in Sedona. So I like Google one and it's like 53 minutes away in Flagstaff. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I could get down to Sedona and I could do like a day trip to Flagstaff and just go check it out and see what it's like. And I've never been there and I hadn't really heard anything about it. Like I literally had no clue what Flagstaff was like. But I went and I drove there and it ended up being this really beautiful like drive. Like, I mean, picturesque, like beautiful like views through, Flagstaff. And so to Flagstaff. And so I drove there and I got to this town and it's like, wow, this feels like civilization again. There's like all these chain restaurants. There's like a Target there. There's like a bunch of like cool coffee shops. And I just felt like so good. Like getting out of Sedona because it's just like, I don't know. I just don't think I could live somewhere that has that kind of small town feel. This is how I am. I've always been that way. I've always loved big cities. I lived in Chicago for 7 years and it was like perfect size-wise to me. And that's one of the biggest cities in the United States, right? And so I drove over there. I went to Bath and Body Works and I try not to like constantly shop at Bath and Body Works because I don't feel like, I know they're corporate and I don't know a lot about them, but I don't feel like they're probably like the cleanest products. But it's Christmas time and they had, right, so this is November and they have all their Christmas stuff out and I love Christmas scents. So I went and I got some like hand lotion and then like this cool lip scrub. They're doing a collaboration with like the milk cookies, which I've always loved those. And so I went and bought all this stuff and then I found like the coolest coffee shop because after I went to Bath and Body Works, I was like, why don't I just go check out a cafe in Flagstaff and I'll just continue to work. And so I found this one, it was like a kava cafe, which I never heard of kava before, but it's like this plant that they make into like a tea. So like I tried it and the girl who worked there was really nice, like telling me about it and be like, okay, try this or that. It just tastes kind of like a plant. But the best thing that's most similar to it, I would say like the texture of it is matcha, but matcha has a very distinct taste. And so kava has its own taste. But I went there and checked it out and it was like there was like cool murals and like on the walls and then on the TV they were like playing Pokemon and they had this kind of like electronic music you would hear like at a music festival going. And so it just was like, it was a cool vibe, right? And that's the kind of stuff, that I really like. And so I guess I was kind of disappointed there wasn't more kind of like cool stuff like that, like artsy or like alternative, maybe, I don't know, type of stuff in Sedona. And there was one kind of place like that where they were selling water, but it wasn't a place you could like hang out in Sedona. So I just kind of felt like I had to like get out of there for one day. And I was there for 9 days total. So if I went back, I'd probably want to go for like a retreat or experience where you're kind of like doing something the whole time and at a place where they have things set up for you and probably like a shorter, period of time. So, and I also tried while I was in Sedona, I tried some really cool, like different spiritual like therapies that they have there. Like the first one I tried it was like a light therapy, and I call it rainbow light therapy. I don't think it's technically called rainbow light therapy, but that's what I call it. Because, and I was reading about it, and I didn't even really read about it till after I had it done. That's how I am. When I intuitively know I need to do something, like I literally was at this coffee shop in Sedona. I saw a brochure about it and I saw a picture of it and like, I need to do that. So I just drove over to that place and booked a session to do it without really learning about it. So I did the session and then I read about it later. And that's the thing is because like logically that's kind of stupid. Like you want to research things and know what you're getting yourself into when you do some kind of like treatment. But when you're really in touch with your intuition is when you can just be like, I know this is good for me. I know it's not going to mess me up or mess my body up. Like I know I need this and I want this. And so I'm just going to do it. And you can just feel the security around it where you don't necessarily need to research it. But yeah, that's when you really are able to like have that relationship with your intuition, your spirituality, and you can kind of do that. So anyway, I went to do this light therapy thing, and basically like my experience is that like it's in this room that's like dimly lit, has like Buddha statues. Like Buddha is everywhere in Sedona. Like he is everywhere. And so I went and I laid down on this little table and they put these headphones on you and they're playing this really cool like spiritual type of music. And they put an eye mask over you and then they like turn on this machine. And what it is, it's 7 crystals that are shaped like they're carved to be in like a specific shape that represents each of the chakras from like up from like the crown down to your root. And the one of the reasons I was so drawn to it is because they put rainbow lights in it. Like each color of the rainbow is put into this crystal, then like the light projects through the crystal onto your body, right? And because I love rainbows, right? Like I was a Lisa Frank girl growing up, so just seeing those colors, I was like, oh my gosh, it's rainbow, it's so cute, I have to do it. And so I go and I do this, and like I had this like mask on. I guess you're not supposed to look at the crystals, but I did pull it down a little bit just because I love the pretty colors, and I was like, oh, they're so pretty, I want to look at them. But for most of the part, I did have the mask on, and it's like, it was crazy. It felt like an energy healer was standing over me and was like doing Reiki or, was sending light codes to me or doing energy work. It was that potent. Like it was insane to me that it was just like light going through crystals that was causing this. Like the crystals could be the channel for like the guides to come through and to do healing. Whereas like, most of the time it's like a person is doing that, right? Like a healer is doing that. It was so intense, and it was $20 for 20 minutes. So it's also extremely affordable. And so I was super impressed by this. So when I was like checking out and I told the lady who works at the front desk, who'd also been the one who like sat me down in the back and came and got me when the session was over, I was like, that was like crazy powerful. It felt like a practitioner was standing over me doing energy work. And she was like, yeah, she's like, for those who are tapped in, like it can be really powerful. And I think that's interesting about Sedona too, is because it draws in so many people that I don't think are tapped in and like don't meditate or haven't opened their third eye. So it's like they go do something like that and they're like, wow, I'm just like lying under these like little lights and listening to music and I don't really feel anything. So I think they get a lot of that there. But I was telling her, I was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, yeah, she's like, people travel like hours to come here and do that treatment. And I was like, I thought that was incredible. And I wasn't expecting it to be that powerful or to feel that much. And so I had seen this other like treatment that I was interested in doing. It was called the Pleiadian Tachyon Chamber. Tachyon, I don't know how you say that. Now it's a little bit more expensive than the light therapy was. Like I said, light therapy was pretty cheap. The Pleiadian one was like $150. And it was longer, it was like an hour and a half. So not a bad price by any means, but it was a more expensive investment than the light therapy. But after having the light therapy experience, I was like, no, I want to sign up. I want to do it. I want to see what it's like. And so I booked the Pleiadian thing like a couple days after I did the light therapy. And it is a very cool experience. So like basically it was in this house in a neighborhood, and like you wouldn't be able to necessarily like tell that this was any kind of like spiritual type of experience, which I've seen this done this way other places too. But it's like this house, and it's been kind of converted on the inside, but the outside it just kind of looks like a normal house. But it was really cool because I drove through this neighborhood, and it's like this, like, I don't know, just the whole thing about Sedona, like the city of Sedona wants it to look very like nice and like picturesque. So like they told McDonald's like you can't have the yellow arches like in our city, so they painted them like turquoise or teal. Like that's a thing that people go to, like the blue McDonald's, and like post pictures on TikTok. And so I noticed like the water tower was painted like the same red that the mountains are in this neighborhood. Like it just blended in, like it was just so picturesque. And I was like, why can't everything on earth be like this? Why does it always have to be these like ugly, like things that we have, like ugly water towers or buildings, right? Like why can't it all be picturesque like this? So anyway, so I went to this house in this neighborhood, and like the guide was like standing outside waiting for me, and she was like so sweet. And then we like went inside and we talked about the chamber and just kind of chatted about different stuff. And she had me like take off all of my jewelry, because like going into this chamber, like it can, I guess it's like electromagnetic frequencies that can react like if you have jewelry on to like certain metals and things. And she even made me like take out my like ear piercings, like on the side of my ear that like I don't normally take out. Like they're not ones with normal back, they're like backs. They're like the one that has like they give you at the piercing place that has that like kind of like screw on back. So it's like I had to take that off, and I was like, okay, like I haven't taken this off like in a year. So it's kind of weird, but I did take it all off, and it was fine. She missed my nose piercing though. I thought about that after, because I was like, oh, I think I'm supposed to take off my nose piercing, but that I don't know if I would have taken that off. So, because hard to get back on. So anyway, the healing chamber is in a separate room, and she started playing music that was throughout the entire, basically like this kind of like sitting waiting room. Absolutely beautiful. The way they had the sitting in the waiting room was just like magnificent, like so nice, such a vibe. And you sit on these couches and you talk to the guide, and then she started playing this music that I was going to listen to in the chamber, and it's just like it's like that wasn't very good, but it was like these deep that were just like otherworldly, and just like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff you listen to when you're about to go into the plant medicine ceremony, right? And so she's playing this stuff, and you go in this room and you sit like on this mattress, and it was a super comfy mattress, and the pillows, I mean, the quality of the mattress and the pillows were just like top notch, like you're sitting on a cloud. And you like sit under, and you see these things on social media and like at expos and stuff constantly, but this like these gold triangles, I guess, I don't know what they're made out of, but you see them constantly in the spiritual community. And so I sat under one of those, and it was like the same thing with the light therapy, is that like you just start to feel like there is an energy practitioner sitting right over you. Like you feel the energy going through your body, you start to have visions, you see the guides. Like I move a lot during meditation. Like I'll just like let the guides move my like arms, really just my arms, like around my body. And And so I was definitely having that experience. And I kind of set the intention, because one thing the guide does with you is you set an intention at the beginning of the experience. I was like, just for whatever is my highest good. And so I kind of just left it at that. Like, I was kind of like, part of me wanted like my back pain to feel better, but I'm like, it might not be for my highest good to be worked on my back pain right now. It might be for something else. And it definitely was something else that came through. But one thing that I had at the beginning of the when she left, and it's like she didn't really have to turn it on. You just kind of sit under it and it does its thing. But I think it was 55 minutes. I did 55 minutes in there, and I had this vision of like the Pleiades. And it was like, it was outside. It was at some type of facility in the Pleiades made out of stone. So this building is like made out of stone. And there's this giant staircase, outdoor giant staircase. And to your left, there's like this little, like, I guess man-made is not the right word that they would use, but like created. It's not something that naturally occurs in nature. Path for water. Water was flowing down the stairs. And there were these huge stone arches above like both the stairs and this like water stream. And I could feel that like when you were going in for some type of healing, you would be on this like little boat thing that you would sit on, and you would go on that water stream, and that's how you get to different places in the facility. And I think you might even receive treatment in that like you would just be in the stream, and as you're going through it, like you would receive your treatment, some type of energetic or spiritual thing, right? And I don't know if any of that makes sense. Like, I'm trying to describe it the best that I can, but I would see the Pleiadians walking around. They all were wearing like business suits. It was weird. They were wearing like business suits and like walking around, but very official, like talking like matter of fact about business and like results of this and that and like administrative type of things. And so I had that vision of a Pleiades, and I thought it was pretty cool. I guess kind of like seeing how this technology is used. And I remembered it. I had some soul memories coming up of like me being treated in those facilities, but then also me remembering being treated in those facilities. So it's kind of double layered as well. So I had some visions at the beginning. I was feeling the energy. I got charged with, I don't know if you can say this word, I think it gets censored a lot, so I'm going to say sacral, sensuality energy, supercharged with it. Crazy. Not what I was expecting to happen, but it's what I needed for my highest good, right? Like I said, I'm trying to manifest a partner in my life, so that's an important part of that, right? Is that type of like sacral energy, sacral chakra energy. If you don't know what that means, you can Google it. But yeah, so I was like, what? Like, this is what's happening? And that's what happens when you put something up for your highest good, right? It's like what you need may not be what you expect. So you just let it happen, right? You go with the flow. And so it was the same as the light therapy, like very powerful, and it was weird because it's like, it's again going back to that combination of like science and spirituality. Like, they're so separate and butted against each other in our current climate, right? And I think there's history to that when there was like a separation of science and the church, like in the 1600s, I think is when it was. But it's like, we need to combine these things, because it's like an energy healer is like the same thing that this technology is doing, right? It's like they go hand in hand. They shouldn't be butted up against each other, right? And so this whole experience was really cool. I'm so glad that I did it. And I went and I checked it out. And I think I definitely think you can get stuff like that outside of Sedona, but there was there was that same, like the Pleiadian stuff. It was a different name. It's called like Eye Pyramids. There was another place that did it, and I've seen that stuff online. So I think there's multiple places that did it, but I was pretty happy and impressed with like the experience I had and like how well it worked. So I think it's cool. I think it's really cool. So that was I think I did that on my last day in Sedona. And so by that time, like I was ready to get out of there. Like I said, I felt a little bit cooped up. I also, I didn't have my own place. So I think I was ready to kind of have my own place again. So I left Sedona a few days ago now recording this. I actually went to Albuquerque for one night, and I stayed in the cutest little casita. It was basically someone's like guest house, and I love checking out Airbnbs and like seeing how they're set up and how they're decorated and like all the functionality of them. So that was a really cute like small one. I was just there for like one night. And I really like the energy of Albuquerque. Every time I go there, it's super cold. Like I've never been there in the summer. It's always cold and it feels like there's not a lot of people out, but it just has this like it has this interesting energy. And I know a lot of stuff has gone on in Albuquerque that's like low frequency and like the industry there and stuff. But yeah, it was really cool. So I was there for one night and then I went on to Roswell, New Mexico, which is where I'm at now. And Roswell has made its personality about one thing, and that is the aliens and the UFO crash that happened in 1947. So I went yesterday to like the UFO museum and I learned all about it. It's really interesting, and I feel like now it's like that same information. It was just, to me, it's like we're seeing that stuff on TikTok and Instagram every day. People are coming forward, whistleblowers are coming forward, whether it's, about stuff that's being hidden in Hollywood or like science stuff that's being hidden or evidence of aliens or people seeing aliens. Like, it's crazy to go to Roswell and just see like, hey, like this was covered up in the 40s and like no one was talking, like, like people really, like, for a long time, like the cover up was solid until like I think like the 80s or something like that. And now it's been known for like a while, but it just showed to me like how much progress has been made in that area, and we are getting disclosure, we are getting people more stepping forward. And I mean, it's a long process, but it's happening and we're in the thick of it, right? Like every time I open up social media, I'm seeing, okay, here's a clone on TV that's shorting out, or here's a person coming forward about Hollywood, or here's a discovery that NASA is making that's showing that there's evidence of an alien or alien ship or whatever. So it's been fun in Roswell, and I'm actually going to be driving to Santa Fe tomorrow to the Meow Wolf exhibit, the art exhibit, so that should be fun. And then after Roswell, I'll be heading to Marfa for, I think, 3 days, which I love Marfa. Not a lot of spiritual stuff in Marfa, more artsy, but for some reason, I love that place so much. I love the land, so I'm excited to go. So that's where I'll leave you guys today. I hope you enjoyed learning about my experience in Sedona. If you've been to Sedona yourself and want to drop about your experience in the town or with the vortex, or maybe you went on a retreat or something like that, drop your comments below. Also, please make sure and note that I do have some freebies below as well. So if you're interested in a third eye activation meditation or some starseed sticker printables, I do have those linked below, so please check those out. And yeah, like I noted, if you would like to get a reading with me and learn more about your soul and your soul's energy and why you came to this planet, you can also book a soul origin and life purpose reading below. So I have that session linked and all my other sessions linked below. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and that is it for now. All right, bye, everyone.